Just above the water of the Persian Gulf, an American missile is moving at close to 1,000 miles an hour. And the only thing in its seeker is a smokestack. 5 feet of laser-guided steel is about to stop a quarter mile of ship. The American blockade of Iran is not yet 1 day old. This is its first shot. The stack belongs to the Belma, a supertanker built to lift some 300,000 tons of cargo, one of the largest moving machines human beings have ever built. She is empty, riding high, and she is running for the Iranian coast. Again and again, American voices on the radio have ordered her to turn around. She has not turned. The missile arrives. Steel opens with a crack that slaps across the water, and black smoke climbs out of the funnel in a thin, straight column. Another missile follows it in. Far below, the engine falls silent. The great hull coasts, slows, and goes still. Nobody sinks her. Nobody boards her. Nobody, as far as any report says, is even hurt. That is not restraint. That is the weapon. Welcome back to Defense Declassified. On July 15, 2026, in international waters of the northern Persian Gulf, an American aircraft put Hellfire missiles into the smokestack of the supertanker Belma as she steamed for Kharg Island, the terminal that ships most of Iran's crude oil to the world. Washington has never said what fired them, helicopter or jet. Central Command will only call it an American aircraft, and it has never gone one word further. Somehow that vagueness is worse. Anything American, anywhere over the Gulf, might be the thing that ends your voyage. No oil spilled that day because there was no oil aboard. And that is the riddle at the center of this story. Why put warheads into an empty tanker? And why into the funnel of all the steel on a ship that size? The answer is a new kind of naval war, one that stops ships by the square foot instead of sinking them by the ton. For more reconstructions of how sea power actually gets used, subscribe. Start with the ship, because her size is the whole story of the shot. The Belma is a supertanker of the largest working class afloat, built about 2 decades ago, a third of a kilometer from bow to stern. Loaded, she can lift roughly 2 million barrels of crude. A crew of about 25 runs her from the white accommodation block at her stern, and out of the top of that block rises the funnel. On this voyage, her tanks held nothing but seawater ballast. She rode high, the red paint of her lower hull standing out of the sea like a tide line. An empty supertanker sounds harmless. In a blockade, it is the opposite. Kharg Island, where she was heading, is the small island terminal where Iran's export pipelines end and the outbound tankers load. Every empty hull that reaches Kharg sails away full. The Belma was not carrying 2 million barrels. She was 2 million barrels waiting to happen. Stop the hull before it loads, and the oil stays ashore, unsold, without one drop touching the water. Then the aim point. A supertanker is pushed by a single engine, a slow-turning marine diesel, the height of a 4-story building, working in a machinery space at the stern. Everything the ship can do, make way, hold course, steer it all, comes out of that one compartment, and the funnel is that compartment's chimney, high above the waterline and far from the tanks. Washington has never explained why it aimed there. Marine engineering explains it anyway. Send missiles into the stack and you reach a ship's power without ever opening her hull to the sea. The weapon matched the logic. The Hellfire is a laser-guided missile the size of a fence post, about 100 pounds, designed in the 1970s to punch through Soviet tank armor. 100 pounds against 300,000 tons cannot sink anything. It was never meant to. It only had to find one room. And the Belma was not the only hull being watched that day. How did the Gulf get that hot? Rewind 90 days. In April, after talks in Islamabad collapsed, Washington blockaded Iran's ports for the first time in this war. In June, a memorandum signed at Versailles bought a ceasefire, and the warships stood down. The pause lasted 3 weeks. In early July, it tore apart in the Strait of Hormuz, strike answering strike, including an Iranian attack on a container ship in the strait itself. President Trump declared the ceasefire over and attached a demand with no precedent in modern seafaring that traffic passing Hormuz would owe the United States a 20% reimbursement. On July 13th, he announced the blockade was coming back. It took effect the next day at 1600 hours Washington time, which on the Gulf is nearly midnight. It did not arrive alone. In the same window, a 90-minute American strike package hit Iranian command centers, air defense batteries, missile and drone stocks, and coastal surveillance radars at Bandar Abbas, on Greater Kharg Island, and at sites deeper inland. The kinds of systems that could have reached the ships and aircraft now holding the line. Then the first day at sea began. 2 merchant ships bound for Iran answered their radios, came about, and steamed away. Not a shot was needed. The Belma held her course. What was said in her wheelhouse and why her master pressed on, nobody outside that bridge has ever explained. What is documented is the pattern. Warning, no turn. Warning again, no turn. Somewhere in the haze, an American aircraft took station and a laser settled on the funnel. A Hellfire covers its final mile in under 5 seconds. Aboard a big tanker, the deck never stops trembling. The slow beat of the engine runs through every ladder, every bunk, every coffee cup, and to a crew that tremor is simply the feel of a working ship. The first hit came through the steel before its sound arrived through the air, a hammer blow felt in the soles of the feet, then the second into the same wounded stack. Alarms, black smoke rolling off the funnel and flattening downwind. And then the strangest alarm of all, stillness, the tremor underfoot winding down and stopping. A ship longer than 3 football fields lay dead in the water, upright, intact, and going nowhere. No casualties were reported. Whether every man aboard walked away unhurt, Central Command has never said. Its public verdict on the blockade's first shot came down to one sentence. The ship is no longer transiting to Iran. For most of naval history, a blockade gave a captain 2 tools: board the runner or sinker. Boarding a moving supertanker means sending sailors up a wall of steel, the height of an apartment block, toward a crew whose intentions they cannot know. Sinking one, even an empty one, means her own fuel oil spreading on the sea, a crew in the water, and a wreck on the evening news. Tank gunners have a name for the third option, the one used on the Belma: a mobility kill. The vehicle survives, the crew survives, and the fight is over anyway. On July 15th, that idea went to sea, delivered by the same missile it grew up around. Count the ledger of the blockade's first day. 2 merchant ships turned back with words alone. 1 tanker disabled by a missile lighter than a single link of her anchor chain. 2 million barrels of future exports denied. 0 barrels spilled. Not 1 reported casualty, and the bill did not stay at sea. A disabled supertanker has to be surveyed, towed, repaired, and argued over with insurers, and every owner and master in the tanker trade could now run the new arithmetic for themselves. Turn around and lose a voyage. Hold your course and lose your engine room. The Belma's story did not quite end there. There are reports, never confirmed, that she was hit again 2 days later at Kharg Island itself, which would mean she finished her voyage under tow and found the war waiting at the pier. Washington has said nothing about it. She has company in the ledger too. By figures Central Command later gave to a Washington newspaper, the spring blockade alone had disabled 6 ships and turned back 122 more. That is the new grammar of the Gulf. A warning on the radio is no longer an opening bid. It is the last step before the laser. For a century, sea power was measured by what it could sink. Dreadnoughts, torpedoes, tonnage sent to the bottom. The first shot of this blockade measured something else: what you can stop and how little it takes. One of the biggest machines afloat, stopped through one compartment in a few square feet of steel. Iran's oil is still ashore. The Belma never loaded her 2 million barrels. And every master in the Gulf now hears the voice on the radio a little differently. But a blockade is not an event. It is a promise that has to be kept against every hull, every day. And Tehran has spent decades learning to move oil past anyone watching, with renamed ships, darkened transponders, and friends willing to look away. What happens when that playbook meets this one? That is next time on Defense Declassified. Until then, stay sharp.